there, it's Gary Parrish. Welcome back to CBS Sports Eye on College Basketball Podcast, where we sometimes discuss camel fighting, dodo birds, and leaky black. Matt Norlander is here with me. Look, though, we got 4 boxes. Kyle Boone's here. Adam Finklestein's here. If you're watching on YouTube, you know what to do to the like button. Shouts to Brandon Davies. And if you're not yet subscribed to the CBS Sports College Basketball YouTube channel, please do that while you're here. Let's get into it. Let me explain to you what we got 4 of. It's so that me and Norlander don't have to do every pick. Plus, those other 2 guys on the bottom, let's be honest, they're just smarter about this stuff than we are. So we got Kyle here, we got Adam here, and what we're going to do is a 1 through 30 2024 NBA mock draft, and we'll be alternating picks in alphabetical order. So that means Kyle B, Kyle Boone, that B's first. Yeah. I'm going to go last. We're going to do it like that, and we'll be picking. We'll make the selections not necessarily on what we think these franchises will do based on intel and reporting, but what we would do if we were making the picks for these franchises. Does that make sense to everybody? Does this sound more or less like what we discussed?
Sounds good to me. Absolutely. Quad box. If you're watching on YouTube or after that, counterclockwise situation. And I got to say, we should be running NBA franchises. I'm so thrilled to be doing this.
I mean, I read something recently. There's this one guy, he went from podcasting to coaching in the NBA. So I don't know why we can't go from podcasting to running an NBA franchise.
I agree. I agree.
This whole JJ Redick thing's made me re-examine my entire career. Like when I was looking for a producer for the Gary Parrish show in Memphis, I just got, my old producer from my old radio show. I didn't realize you could get like LeBron James to do a podcast with you. And then I was like, man, this is a pretty nice life. I didn't realize you could go from podcasting to coaching the Lakers. I've really screwed this up my whole life.
Okay. That said, you've been in LA for like 5 years now. I don't know why you're complaining, GP.
Oh, man. All right. I guess I got it. I still got it. By
the way, we're going to get rolling. At least we're breaking the mold with an NBA mock draft podcast. I believe this is the first one ever live on YouTube, by the way.
Yeah, so nobody's ever done this. Nobody's ever thought to do this. And it's always with the audience that is obviously there for mock drafts. Is why we're doing them all the time. You would think at some point somebody would have said, we should do a mock draft in podcast form, put it on video, and I bet folks will watch it. I can't believe nobody's ever thought about that until us. But here we are now, trendsetters once again.
Not the only Trailblazers on this episode, if you get what I'm saying.
If you get what I'm saying. All right, that's enough nonsense, I think. The Atlanta Hawks are picking first in the draft after winning the lottery. Improbably so. And we'll put them on the clock right now. Cal Boone, you're in charge because your last name starts with a B and none of ours starts with an A or a B. So you're picking first with the number 1 pick in the 2024 NBA draft. The Atlanta Hawks will do what, in your opinion?
Yeah, keep in mind we're doing a mock based on what we would do. I would do the 2 phones, one for the low first, and I'd be trying to trade out of this pick. Don't want it, don't need it. But if I'm hanging on to number 1, I'm going to take Zachary Reese-Shea for the Atlanta Hawks. Good size, developing shooter, has really made strides as a shooter last year. 6'9", versatile on both ends of the floor. Not sure if he has star potential, but I think he's a pretty safe prospect, can be kind of a 3-and-D and maybe a little bit overqualified 3-and-D type prospect. Again, trying to trade out of this pick, but at number 1, that's who I would take if I had the number 1 pick.
And go ahead, man.
I want to hop in here. We're not gonna just dive into every single pick because frankly we don't have time for that. However, number 1 pick, we got to talk about it. I want Fink's evaluation on this pick. I want to know if you guys think that there's any chance that this thing can be traded out of, because it doesn't seem likely. And 3. GP and I just talked about this on HQ. Reese-Shea, if he does go number 1, to me is the most underwhelming number 1 pick in a long time. I feel
like a word. Yeah.
Yeah. So take it over, Fink. I mean, do you think Atlanta has any success trading out of this if it wants to? And what do the people need to know about this guy? Because this is not just the way that everything's breaking. This is not how you sell the top of a draft. You just don't. Nobody knows who this guy is, and he doesn't. To me, I would agree with KB. He lacks like alpha dominant star quality as a projected number 1 pick.
That's 100% spot on. We typically don't see a 3-and-D prospect, which is arguably the most coveted archetype of a role player in the NBA, be a candidate to go number 1. But that is representative of what you've got in this draft, a draft that lacks obvious star power at the top. Reese-Shea, someone that has one of the higher floors, for all the reasons Kyle laid out. 3-and-D, defends, he makes shots, he's got good positional size, but we don't know if there are star outcomes there. So part of this for Atlanta is like selling it to ownership, to your fan base of like, hey, you need to keep this in perspective. We can only pick from the players who are available. But I think one of the reasons why you see them taking this to the 11th hour is they're making everyone behind them keep guessing. And in so doing, they are keeping the door open for them to make trade offers. I think that's one of the reasons why we don't have any clear intel about what they're doing. We heard they're bringing in Modest Buzelis today. We thought they were choosing between Ricochet and Klingon. So they've got everybody guessing. The only guy we think they're not taking, ironically, is Sarr, and that's the player who was the betting favorite 2 weeks ago.
Right. And now the favorite is Ricochet. At FanDuel, as of this morning, he was like minus 240. Everybody else was plus money. He is the expected favorite to be the number one pick. But remember, I guess it was just 2 years ago, those betting odds, like they flipped dramatically multiple times in the final week leading up to the draft. And it wasn't clear that Paulo was going to go number one overall until like maybe 10 minutes before he went number one overall. So we could have a situation like that. But on Sarr, and I know you guys know this, but for people who might not, we'll go, okay, why is he not on the board for Atlanta anymore, at least in theory, when he was a few weeks ago the betting favorite to be the number one pick and has been described as the best prospect in this draft by some people. I don't know if everybody agrees with that. In fact, I'm sure everybody does it, but he has been described that way by some. He has declined to go to Atlanta. He hasn't worked out for them. He hasn't met with them. The idea is that he would rather be in Washington than Atlanta. So I don't know if that's a sensible approach. Reasonable people could argue that different ways. But at this point, it looks like Sarr's just never going to go to Atlanta. And so they're going to continue to look elsewhere with, again, Ricochet at this point being the favorite to go number one overall. Number two, Washington Wizards. Fink, you're on the clock with the second pick. Washington Wizards select whom?
Alex Sarr. You've got a mobile 7-footer who in the modern NBA really projects on the defensive end of the floor because he can slide his feet laterally. He can get off them vertically, although he's still got to build up his body and be able to play through contact, not just when he's on the ground banging, but even in midair as a leaper. And so he projects as being able to do all those things that are most coveted in the modern NBA. And he can really cover the court. I mean, this guy at 7 feet tall flies around the court and makes up space in a hurry. The questions are on the offensive end of the floor. Just like we said about Ricochet, who's kind of an unconventional number one. Sarr is also an unconventional number one because this is a guy who scored 9 points per game in the NBL and doesn't have a very clear offensive role just yet. You can buy into the shooting potential. You can buy into the mismatch potential because he's got quick feet and you say, okay, maybe he can play make past less mobile big men if he puts on enough weight to play center. But this is someone who offensively is going to be a work in progress, physically is going to be a work in progress, but defensively has a chance to be one of the more versatile and impactful defenders in this class.
KB, I do want to get your thoughts on this. And just to reiterate, we're not going to be able to break down every pick 4 people at a time. We'll be here for 7 hours. We ain't got that kind of time. Neither do you, I hope. But KB, I did want to get your thoughts on Sarr. Fink said, you can buy into the shooting potential because when you watch him, it looks fine for the most part. And then you look at the numbers and you go, I don't know what the numbers aren't good, but and so Fink, I'd like to get your reaction to that too, because when I watch him shoot, that looks like a guy who's going to be able to make shots out to the 3-point line in the NBA. But the truth is he's never done it reliably yet.
Yeah, I feel
confident
that Alex Sarr is going to be a really good defender in the NBA, and that's where I think you kind of build his case as a prospect. If he's able to shoot, then I think you're talking about an outcome where he's maybe like a Jaren Jackson Jr., like in an ideal world. But a lot of things have to go right for him to be a defensive player of the year type prospect who can play both inside and out. His shot blocking is tremendous. His movement, I think, is outstanding. He does a lot of things that's very intriguing. And I think if you're talking about just pure potential in this class, Alex Sarr probably has the most pure potential. It's just right now, I think the shooting numbers just aren't quite there. You kind of have to envision 3 or 4 years down the line. He has to develop a lot within his bag to really pay off as a number 2 pick in this draft.
Think real quick, you don't buy the shooting?
I just the basketball, coaching geek in me, just like, oh, he's driving his shoulders back. He's got a narrow base. The ball gets a little flat. Like his touch is fine. It's possible, but it's not like it comes off his hand. Like, honestly, I think you could make the case that Zach Edey's shot looked better in like rhythm shooting drills than Alex Sarr's can. I know that'll come off like a hot take, but that was I'm not sold on Sarr's shooting by any stretch.
Matt, third pick. You're on the clock with the third pick in the 2024 NBA draft. The Houston Rockets select.
Are we doing this with everyone? Like, are you gonna?
Oh yeah, no, you have to. That's the way you have to get into it.
I feel like I should have brought
you can't pick somebody until somebody says.
So you are. Let's just be clear. You're a GM and you're Adam Silver for the entire episode.
That's right. I shaved my head for this.
Yeah. In fact, you had a suit and tie on before this, and you took it off. I figure you should have kept it on if that was going to be the.
I think it always looks silly when people aren't dressed similarly. I don't care what the dress code is. It's just I don't need one guy in a suit and another guy in a t-shirt. Let's do t-shirts or suits, but you can't do them both.
I got you, bud. With the third pick now, again, we are doing this if we were running these franchises, and so I am doing this in correspondence with my big board, and because of this player's shooting ability, his size, his athleticism, I ever so slightly, I have Dalton Knecht ranked as a better prospect long-term than Reed Sheppard, so I have the Rockets taking Dalton Knecht third overall. If I was in this spot running the Rockets, well, I'll tell you what, I wouldn't be on this podcast right now, but nevertheless, I would take Knecht because I don't hold a player's age against him as much as obviously modern NBA front offices do. I understand the reasons for that. However, I was talking with one person in an NBA franchise who actually holds a top 10 pick less than a week ago. And we got into talking about the fact that, injuries are now so common as well. Like when you are holding players back because of age or dropping them down a little bit, when you really look at a given draft and how careers play out throughout, some players wind up playing just as less or just as much, I should say, even though they might be 3 years younger, because you can't predict the nature of injuries and how these careers are going to go. So if anything, this person agreed with me that the ageism that plays into this process has become a little bit overstated. With that in mind, I will take Knecht third to Houston. I think he's a player that can both step in immediately and be an impact player. I said this on HQ earlier on Monday as well. Go look at the past 3 NBA drafts and go look at the following season or 2 seasons and see how many guys. We talk about these guys so much, as we should. It's mock draft season, but look how many are actually relevant and impactful players. Like there are going to be so many of these guys that just do not matter whatsoever next season. However, I think Knecht in the right spot can be a guy that can step in and average double digits because the shooting is huge. I think it's the most important skill you can have as an NBA player. He's got real legit length, and he's not afraid to put it on the deck and drive to the 10. He's my pick at 3 to the Rockets.
To your point, we spend so much time talking about these players leading up to every draft, and then we might really never talk about them again. Like the other day, somehow, somewhere, like Grady Dick popped up on my timeline or something, and it just occurred to me, I have not thought about Grady Dick since last June, but last June I talked about him every day, and then he got picked, and I have no idea what happened to him.
He had a 20-game spurt where he was really with some of us just geek out on this all year long. Yeah, I just lost track of him. The only thing I know about Grady Dick in the NBA is that he took a picture with somebody else who had a. That's it. That's all I know.
I know what you're referencing.
That's the only thing I know that he did, and so this draft will be similar. We're going to talk about 30 different players today, and about half of them we'll never talk about again. I'm on the clock if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
I'm running the San Antonio Spurs. Look at me. I'm running the San Antonio Spurs with the 4th pick in the 2024 NBA draft. The San Antonio Spurs select Reed Sheppard out of the University of Kentucky. I'll be quick on this because I feel like I've said the same thing about him 40 different times in 40 different places. He's my favorite player in this draft. If I were picking first, I would pick Reed Sheppard first. I think he's going to be fabulous. I don't think he's going to be a little guy who can make shots in the NBA. I think he can be an all-star level guard in the NBA, a difference maker for a franchise. And buddy, if you are starting something with Victor Wembanyama and this, one of not just the best shooter in this class, but one of the best shooters we've seen interprofessional basketball in some time. I feel great about it. If I don't know that Shepard's actually going to be available at 4, he just happened to be available at 4 in this mock draft, and I was thrilled when I saw the emails come in because this is the guy again. I would take number 1.
All right, I want to queue up Adam real quick because our YouTube subscribers are aware of a take that Adam had on a recent show with KB on their draft stuff, and if you have not been watching that, you need to be doing that. Obviously, they've been doing a ton of it leading up to this. Think. What is your? I need you to be declarative about this. You don't believe Reed Sheppard is the best shooter in this draft. Why?
I think it's debatable.
Okay.
I think because, and I got this on Twitter today. Like if you just look at the 1-year sample size at Kentucky, which most people do, then it's clear he's best shooter in the draft. If you go back and look at high school, where he shot, according to like Synergy and those things that captured over half of his games, about 33% from 3. In high school and in 3 SSB and various international competitions. So the question I got today is like, well, why is that relevant? Now he shoots 50%. And I said, well, it's relevant for the same reason we should have paid attention to what Jabari Smith's shooting numbers were in high school, because you just want to make sure that the 1 year of college isn't the outlier. Like Jabari Smith, same thing at Auburn. GP mentioned him a couple of minutes ago. He was the guy that was supposed to go number 1 2 years ago. He was a driller at Auburn. He hasn't really been a driller since getting to the Houston Rockets. 2 years, hasn't been above 40% yet. So we've seen that high school was almost more representative than college. Certainly college is the better representative, but the point being is that it's not the only indicator of future success that you have to consider.
We'll go to Detroit now. Cal Boone back on the clock with the 5th pick in the 2024 NBA draft. Detroit Pistons select
Kling Kong, Donovan Clingan. For the Detroit Pistons, I think he has a chance to go number 1 on draft night. He's 7 foot, best shot blocker in the draft, efficiency darling. He's great finishing around the rim. Finished 2nd in all of college basketball last season in player efficiency rating behind none other than Zach Edey. Also ranked 2nd in box plus minus. So, UConn was a wagon last season, and that was in no small part because of how dominant Donovan Clingan was in the paint. Feel really confident that he's going to be a really good NBA player. And hopefully the shot is going to come through. A lot of people believe that he's going to be able to shoot it from long distance. And if that's the case, if he's going to build that and add that to his resume, then yeah, I think he's going to be a top 5 prospect from this class.
Let me ask you this then. So what, and I don't mean to make you an NBA analyst all of a sudden, but obviously Detroit has Jalen Duren. I only bring this up because this has been a topic of conversation in my hometown. If you're the Pistons, if Clingan falls to you, do you just take him and say, this is our center moving forward, and then you make Jalen Duren available? Or do you make the pick available because somebody's going to want to come up and get Clingan? And if you've got Duren and you're happy with him, you might not want to go that direction, but you can get value in a deal like the Grizzlies coming up. What if the Grizzlies gave you 9 and a future first to move up to 5 so that they could take Clingan? Think, KB, both of you, just thoughts on that.
Yeah, I'd be totally fine moving back. If Clingan is still here on the board and I'm the Detroit Pistons, you're in a bad way if you're Detroit right now. You've been consistently the worst team in the NBA the last 2 seasons. I think there's going to be a lot of teams that have a strong appetite to move up for Donovan Clingan. If he ends up falling to number 5, I can imagine that the Memphis Grizzlies, for example, at number 9 would be very, very hungry to try and move up and probably willing to move a lot of assets, either current or future, or some combination of both. If they're going to offer number 9 and a future pick next year, I would love to take that and think longer term, because the Pistons are not just one piece away. They're several pieces away. I think adding some future picks, adding some future resources would do really, really well for the Pistons in their rebuild.
Fink, what do you think of all that?
So real quick on my mock, I've got Clingan going 3rd. To Houston for a team that he will not play for, because I think Memphis will make every effort to trade up to get him. There are multiple teams, Chicago included, that would like to get him, but Memphis is the primary one. That is a statement I'm making based on intel. I think they would target the 3rd pick. I think they would target the 5th pick. I think they would target the 6th pick. But all of this is predicated on the fact that Atlanta might still take him at number 1. So none of those transactions can happen until we know what Atlanta is doing with that pick.
Real quick, I since we're talking Klingon here, it feels like his highest pick is 1. It doesn't seem like he'll drop below 6 to me, but I think the potential for Atlanta to actually take Klingon at 1 feels real to me personally. And part of that is talking with sources, and then the other part, I appreciate Dan Hurley saying this on the record. He was pretty effusive in his praise for the Hawks, and then talking with them about Klingon, who have expressed a lot of interest. And then, in fact, I don't know if one thing led to the other. I don't think that's the case, but I hadn't heard a ton about this publicly. And then when I did the Q&A with Hurley for the Lakers stuff, he put it out there. And then in the ensuing 48 hours, it just seemed like there was a little bit of a surge of the Klingon Atlanta stuff. So we'll see if it's a smokescreen or not. I wouldn't be surprised personally if he went 1, but the stuff that Fink just laid out there is super interesting. Klingon, to me, ranks among the 3 most interesting players in the draft in terms of who he goes to and where he gets picked. And I feel like how he gets selected actually will impact how the lottery plays out thereafter.
You can find mock drafts right now that have Klingon going number 1 and Klingon going number 7. That is wildly unusual to see somebody 2 days out of the draft, see him projected first somewhere and 7th somewhere else. I think some people have, assumed that he might really slip to like 7 if he doesn't go 1 or 2. Because then you get Houston, they already have a center, might not want another one. The Spurs have a center, might not want another one. Pistons have a center, might not want another one. Hornets have a center, might not want another one. But to Fink's point, he and I are on the same page here. There are franchises that value Klingon as a top 2-3 prospect in this draft. Somebody's going to be willing to come up to 3 or 5 to get him. And that's why I think he's off the board by 5 at the latest. If the 5 franchises picking in the top 5, if none of them want him, somebody will, and they'll come up and get Houston's pick or Detroit's pick, and Klingon will get off the board. I think he's gone by 6. Norlander, is it you now or
it
no?
It is Mr. Finklestein with the 6th pick. Excuse me, Commissioner. I'm going to be the deputy right here with the 6th pick of the 2024 NBA draft. The Charlotte Hornets select
Steph Castle, who is a Kyle Boone favorite. I feel like I should almost yield my allotted time to him to make this pitch, but suffice it to say, Boone is higher on Castle than I am. But I love the fit here in Charlotte, where, as you mentioned, they have their center, they have Brandon Miller on the wing, they have LaMelo Ball. But to your previous point about durability, we don't know how many games LaMelo Ball is going to play, especially if he's wearing his family's shoes. Those have been known to be troublesome to your longevity. So Castle gives you on-off ball versatility. I think he's best off the ball, but playing him next to a couple of questionable defenders, it allows him to slot right in there and be the defensive alpha of that team. And then when Ball is out of the lineup, he can take over the ball handling responsibilities because he can play on-off ball. The upside of Castle comes down to this. Do you buy in his shooting long-term or do you not? I do not. But I will say it was less problematic this year at UConn than I anticipated. Still, I think Charlotte would be a great fit for him.
With the 7th pick in the 2024 NBA draft, Matt Norlander, the Portland Trailblazers select.
Well, the Trailblazers got an interesting spot here, and we're going to get to that. But we still have partners on this podcast, and you're going to get this pick after this break. Nada, give me those partners right.
We've replaced Knuckles with Nebraska.
That's correct. Again, if you're listening to the show, you don't know what GP's talking about. The 7th pick.
You might not know what I'm talking about if you are listening to this show.
Also,
you could be on the show and not know what he's talking about.
There you go.
That is accurate. All right, we got the Trailblazers here with the 7th pick. I'm going to send Devin Carter to the Pacific Northwest. Devin Carter, to me, is a top 5 prospect in this draft, coming off averaging 19.7 points, 8.7 rebounds, 3.6 assists, and 1.8 steals. Oh, by the way, shot nearly 38% from beyond the arc at Providence. And I think one piece of context that gets lost a little bit after the fact, now Providence didn't make the NCAA tournament, is they lost Bryce Hopkins, who was regarded as their best player. Devin Carter, their best prospect, an elite athlete, and to me has the build and competency to be a starting level NBA point guard. Good distributor, great rebounder, good physicality. 3 and is not afraid to put it on the deck to attack the 10, distribute it around. If I'm Portland and you're actually in the spot at 7 and Carter's still on the board, I would be thrilled with this one. Kyle Boone, what are your thoughts on Devin Carter, and do you like this fit specifically for the Blazers?
I do like this fit. Probably the most swaggy player in this draft. I love the way he carries himself. And maybe I got swept away at the NBA draft combine, but when he steps on the floor, he just carries himself with, as like the young kids say, he has an aura about him that I very much like. And he's a great defensive prospect, has always been like a really good defensive prospect, but has really added and kind of married a competent offensive game that I think will bring a level of security to the Portland Trailblazers that I think will help Scoot Henderson. So he's improved as a shooter. I think he's going to add kind of a floor on defense to that team. So yeah, I think I'm on board with this. I would take Devin Carter at number 7 to the Portland Trailblazers. I'm
still in charge of the San Antonio Spurs. They got 2 picks in the top 8. They happen to be 4 and 8, so that falls perfectly for me. With the 8th pick, 2024 NBA draft, San Antonio Spurs select Modest Buzelis. And Fink, I want to ask you, because you just was talking about sample sizes. And I think with him, they're very important as well. It's just different than, say, the Reed Shepherd sample sizes. It's almost the opposite. Buzelis shot, I think, 43% from three-point range. Senior year of high school, was around 27% this season. Seemed to really struggle with the three-point line being moved back. And yet, as I was thinking through it, that's not really a thing we often talk about with shooters. We don't say, man, I don't know if they're going to be able to shoot it once we move them back to the NBA three-point line. But it was a problem, at least statistically, for Buzelis in this past season. Do you buy him as a shooter? Do you dismiss the G League shooting numbers and go back to high school? How do you decide, is this guy a real shooter or not?
I think he's got shooting potential, but from a statistical profile perspective, that year at Sunrise where he was above 40%, that was the outlier. He was not a three-point shooter at Brewster Academy when he was teammates with one Devin Carter, I may add. He was not a three-point shooter when he was played with Expressions Elite, or prior to that with Mac Irvin Fire. His archetype at that stage was as this jumbo wing who could actually handle the ball. In fact, when he played 16 and under, they allowed him to play as a point guard, I guess. He brought the ball up the floor. Let's say that. So it was somewhat, I found it ironic when he was being billed, not by anyone on our network, but as this shooter in the fall, early on the draft cycle, because people only saw the numbers at Sunrise. He's got touch and he's got shooting potential, but he's always kind of had like a 2-stage shot that's got to get a little more fluid. So no, I don't think he is this. I don't think he is this specialist by any stretch. I think he's this ultra versatile overlap of size, playmaking potential, and some shooting potential, but he's not a specialist.
Kyle Boone with the 9th pick of the 2024 NBA draft. The Memphis Grizzlies select. Who you sending me down here to Memphis, Tennessee?
I'm going to give you Cody Williams. Will you take him? Yeah, from Colorado, shot 41.5% from three-point range. 95th percentile as a catch and shoot weapon as a true freshman at Colorado. He's the younger brother of Jalen Williams, who's always obviously an all-star with the Oklahoma City Thunder. Very good length, very good size. Needs to add some weight to his frame. Saw him at the combine. It looked like he definitely could stand to add 15 to 20 pounds of muscle. But I like his game. I think it's going to translate to a really high level as a defender who can shoot. Showed some attacking stuff on the ball at Colorado. So I like his potential there. Obviously, the Grizzlies are in a spot where they are wanting to compete right now. And I believe kind of his skill set as a shooter, someone who can defend multiple positions, will allow the Memphis to continue to kind of pursue that and compete right away. He's still very young, but there's a lot of potential there with Cody Williams.
Norlander, you just spent time with Cody. Big story posted, CBSSports.com. Just in the time you spent with him, I know you walked away impressed. What's the neatest thing you learned about him?
Honestly, I would say how ridiculously mature he is, which isn't a stunner in that, Jalen's was drafted 2 years ago to the Thunder, and they come from a household where both parents were in the Air Force, and for a combined like almost 40 years, and incredibly impressive family. But he is extremely buttoned up. The story gets into his relationship with Jalen, and then he's a super interesting prospect in this regard. And I know we got to keep it moving, but I do want Adam's quick take on Cody before we get out of here, before he makes his next pick as well. He had 3 injuries last season, and Cody Williams was a 5-star prospect. He was top 5 in 247 in his class of 2022. He goes to an uncommon destination for a top 5 level player. He plays at Colorado, and he has an up and down season. He just kind of plays in semi-obscurity because Colorado came onto the scene late as a bubble team late in the season. And between the injuries, he had a wrist fracture in December. Then he broke an orbital bone in his face, and he had to deal with double vision and blurriness there. Then he sprains his ankle. Turns out it's a grade 3 sprain. And what the story details, among other things, is they had a doctor based in LA who does a ton of work with the NBA. And after the fact, he looked at the original MRI. He said, I would have never played him again after this in college, particularly knowing that he was a potential top 10 pick. If he had made it worse, or if it caused another injury, like you could be looking at, months and months and months of rehab. Nevertheless, Cody said he wanted to play. Like there was no keeping him off the floor, but it was not too hard to envision how many other prospects in that spot would have not have played. And even Jalen and his mother basically both went on the record and said he should have never been playing on the ankle. Nevertheless, it was a good season for Colorado. They're going to probably have 3 first-round picks, at least 2 is guaranteed. But I like Cody Williams as a prospect. I think the fact that Jalen has adapted so quickly should be taken into account, even though they are very different players. And what KB said is right. He is skinny. He is skinny. Now, he's got great potential as a wing. I think his athleticism, you will see a different version of him once he gets in the NBA and gets settled. He's almost at 100% healthier, but he's been rehabbing this ankle for basically 3.5 months. And just now, he is just about at 100%. He makes for an interesting prospect, and you have to buy into a lot of what you did not see in college in order to feel that he'll be a top 10 pick. But he's worked out for 9 of the top 10 teams that have picks there. So the expectation is he will go no later than 10. Think real quick, what's your 1 paragraph scouting report on Williams and where he should be going?
High risk, high reward, because we didn't really see the productivity in high school either. The tools were glaring. It's why we ranked him as high as we did. But he's just one of these guys that it's always been a little bit more of an idea than a reality. It could hit, and if it hits, it could hit in a big way. But I also think there are outcomes here where it doesn't hit.
Think you're on the clock with the 10th pick, 2024 NBA draft. The Utah Jazz select.
They're going Ron Holland. Ron Holland is a prospect that I am higher on than most. He was the number 1 ranked high school player in the country last year in that class that included Steph Castle and Cody Williams and Modest Buzelis, all within the top 10. Holland was the guy that was the most competitive among that group. He was the best defender among that group, one of the best athletes. And to be honest with you, I'm not really sure why. I mean, from what I'm told, he hasn't had some great workouts, and that's why his stock has declined. People are concerned about the shooting. He's one of those guys, like when I see the ball come off his hand, I'm much more confident about his shot than I am Alex Saw or somebody like that. Now, I know they play different positions, and so the shooting is more important for Holland. But listen, big wing, athletic, ultra competitive, plays both ends of the floor. If I'm picking for Danny Ainge, that is his prototype. So I've got Ron Holland.
The 11th pick in the 2024 draft, the Chicago Bulls. Norlander, You're on the clock.
Listen, my Bulls fandom has faded significantly over the years, but I can give you photo documentation of the most obsessed Chicago Bulls fan in the state of Vermont, and I wore that proudly. Parents born and raised in Chicago, and longtime listeners are very, very aware of my deep Chicago Bears fandom. So it's a pleasure and honor to finally be running the Chicago Bulls. In this spot, I'm fascinated to see what Kyle Boone thinks about this pick. I'm gonna say one of the better players over the past 2 seasons in college basketball winds up being someone that turns into a top 10 product from this draft. I'm gonna go Kyle Filipowski out of Duke to the Bulls. He's got good size. I think if you want to put a pretty hard ceiling on him, I don't disagree with that, but I think his floor is exceptionally high. Physical player, survived a court storm, of course, which is particularly inspiring.
Tough.
Without a doubt. Can step out and can shoot. I don't think he is an ultra dynamic defender, but I think he has enough of the tools. And going back to when has it really been like 4 years since we saw him at EYBL? Has it really been that long? It has always seemed like someone that had the future of being a top 15 level kind of NBA pick. And to be fair, like Shire put him in a position to succeed. And for the most part, he did. So I have Filipowski going to 11, which I want to be clear on this. This is where I'm putting him based on stock. If I was running the team, it will shock me if Filipowski goes in the lottery. But KB, what are your thoughts on where you have Flip personally? And do you buy him as being a relatively safe pick moving forward with a high floor and someone who should like almost certainly make it to a second contract at minimum?
Yeah, I have him in this range. I have him late in the lottery, and I think there's a pretty wide range of outcomes for Kyle Filipowski. Like he could go, number 12 to OKC or even number 11 to Chicago. But I think there's a chance he slips into the 20s. I think he's somewhat of a polarizing prospect. But, as a freshman last year at Duke, he did pretty much everything that you would expect as kind of a one and done prospect. Ended up having 2 hip surgeries and came back to Duke, never really tested the NBA draft waters, but improved as a passer, improved as a shooter. He really took a lot more responsibility on his shoulder as a sophomore this past season with Duke. So, checks a lot of boxes as a 7-footer who can shoot at a high level, space the floor. And I think his defense is pretty underrated as well. So, I don't think he screams star potential. Don't think there's a lot of guys that scream star potential in this draft. But I think in this range, Kyle Filipowski presents a safe floor, especially for a big man who can do kind of a lot of different things. And maybe not something elite level, but something I think a pretty stable balance of things that he does at a really high level.
I can scream star potential.
Sure, scream it.
Right now, you ready? Let me turn my mic up. I'm not going to scream star potential. I don't think that's good for anybody.
Nope.
I think that would just be distracting. With the 12th pick of the 2024 NBA draft, the Oklahoma City Thunder select. I got them taking Rob Dillingham out of Kentucky.
This is fun, GP, if this actually were to happen.
Well, why not just take and I know he was just like sitting on Kentucky's bench and stuff. I got that, right?
Yeah.
I'm aware of that.
Interesting.
That was interesting. That was something.
That's interesting.
That was interesting. Reed Sheppard and Rob Dillingham were on Kentucky's bench this season. Boy, I bet that's not going to age well. I bet that's not going to be something you brag about 10 years from now, the time you brought Reed Sheppard and Rob Dillingham off your bench. But whatever. With Oklahoma City, listen, they got 1 million picks and they've got a great, strong. I don't know that there's any franchise in the NBA set up better right now than the Oklahoma City Thunder. So it's really just, for me, why not take a big swing on a guy who has clear NBA skills, at least on the offensive end, but obviously would only be available at this point in the draft because he is very small and he does struggle to guard his position. Fink and KB, I want to get your thoughts on Dillingham because he's a big name in this draft. I've seen some people say don't overthink it. Just he's a shot creator. He's a shot maker. He's going to be able to come off your bench and get buckets. He's going to be great. I've seen other people say don't be surprised when the little guy who can't guard struggles in the NBA. Where are you guys at on this?
I would agree with all of it. I think it's just a matter of I think it's just a matter of whether his offense is good enough to compensate for his defense, because he is small, he is slight, and a total non-defender. I mean, KB and I looked it up at one point this season, and he was in the bottom 1% of all college basketball defenders on Synergy, and then he went down. I didn't even know that you could be in the bottom 0%, but somehow he got it done. So it was, but he's arguably the most dynamic player in the class with the ball in his hand. So his offense has just got to be so good that it justifies putting him on the floor defensively. That's where I'm at.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I don't know if you guys can hear that noise. It's Rob Dillingham in the back actually just screaming star potential.
He does scream it, doesn't he?
It's kind of like a low shout.
Yeah.
You can say it like a little bit louder, but I mean the offense is amazing. You guys have seen him play on offense.
He's KB. Here's the thing. He is a dazzler. He is dynamite, but there is a very real, valid question of it was enjoyable as hell to watch him play college basketball. Can he actually translate 80% of that to the pros, because if he can, then we got something. But it is easy to see how it maybe just can't ever pick up speed, traction, and momentum there. But a fascinating pick here.
The only thing that makes me like I'd be willing to do something like this is you don't have to be first team all defense to star in the NBA. It's helpful if you can guard your position, but like, Steph Curry went through a time when he didn't really guard his position so well. He's won MVPs. James Harden used to get clowned on, they just clip one after another, people going right by him. He was an MVP. John Morant is probably never going to make first team all defense or even 10th team all defense, but he still is a star in that league. So I don't love that he's little and he doesn't guard, but to Fink's point, if you're so good offensively, they'll figure out a way to keep you on the court usually.
And I would add this 10 seconds. Mm-hmm. Keep an eye on the way the game's refereed. Yeah. Freedom of movement has been a thing in the NBA. They started to get away with it in the playoffs. If they start allowing more contact, it's bad for Rob Dillingham.
With the 13th pick in the 2024 NBA draft, the Sacramento Kings select KB. It's you.
We're going to take Nikola Topic. And this is a guy who was a top 5 prospect on the CBS Sports Big Board. He has a partially torn ACL that was diagnosed earlier this month and kind of a wild card entering draft night. I think Sacramento, if it is willing to be patient, they could end up getting a top 5 player from this draft at number 13. Obviously, not ideal. It's probably going to end up being a redshirt year for him. But you look back at the recent history in the NBA. Joel Embiid, Ben Simmons, Chet Holmgren. We've had some really productive NBA players. Maybe I shouldn't include Ben Simmons there, by the way. And end up taking a redshirt year and having good NBA careers. So I would be comfortable taking Nikola Topic in this range at number 13. I think he's a dynamic passer, playmaker, really good size, checks a lot of boxes. I think for the Kings could be someone who they could build around with De'Aaron Fox.
Usually ACLs don't, I don't want to say usually anything because I'd need to look at it player by player, but we have seen ACLs say not really damage somebody's draft stock too much. Do you believe, KB, think I'd get your thoughts on this too? Like a lot of people had this guy mocked as a future lead guard with Wemby in San Antonio. There's also some real pressure. I don't know if it's real pressure, but there's some thought that San Antonio doesn't want to just like win 20 games again. They want to actually try to be competitive next year. And that could theoretically move them off of somebody who they otherwise might like, but it's going to have to take a redshirt year. Do you think this cost Topic an opportunity to go top 5, top 8 in this draft?
I think it probably did. We'll see what happens on draft night, right? Like if the Spurs end up getting someone to fall to number 4 that they didn't expect, then possibly I think Topic could be in play at number 8. I really think that the Spurs should consider him at number 8 and be a little bit more realistic maybe about their current situation. They have excellent pieces right now. They have, one of the best young players in the NBA in Victor Wembanyama to build around. But if you're thinking short term, it may be short-sighted. And Topic, I think, could end up being one of the better prospects to come out of this class. Obviously, with the ACL injury, you don't exactly expect and plan for him to be available next season. But I think if you're looking down the road, you're trying to pair someone with Victor Wembanyama as a long-term riding partner. I think Topic could be exactly that. And yeah, there's some questions about his health right now, but I'd be pretty excited about pairing him with Wemby.
Think, would you be comfortable spending, say, a top 10 pick on Topic under these circumstances?
If I had job security, I would.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm being serious.
Yeah.
I think that it's going to take a team with an executive who's got job security beyond the short-term future to take him. Because listen, these executives work on contracts too, and they're usually judged by a recency bias like everybody else. And so if you think your job is on the line in the next year or two, where you need to show some growth, you're not going to take a guy who can't get on the floor for the next, until the next cycle. Mm-hmm. So that's a very real factor in his recruitment, so in his draft stock. So like San Antonio, yeah, there's plenty of job security. Oklahoma City, plenty of job security. Utah, plenty of job security. So those are places that I think have a higher probability of taking someone like this because they can afford to wait on him. This is among the reasons most people don't think coaches should have too strong of a voice in a front office, because they're motivated for different reasons, right? A basketball coach wants to win games next year, whereas a front office member could be thinking more big picture. So
depending on what you're motivated by, it can lead you in different directions with the draft. And that's why most franchises, I don't want to say they, lock coaches out, but there was a time when coaches would run franchises and that's a very rare thing in professional sports now for those reasons and others. We're now to the 14th pick, 2024 NBA draft. Think it's you. Portland Trailblazers select
Tajon Salon, who would be the third Frenchman to go in the lottery. Unprecedented. Obviously, Wemby was the Frenchman who went last year, but this is just a tremendous cycle for France. He's young. He's got a terrific frame, super powerful build that is just going to continue to evolve, and he's got a very high motor. Now, he started to make some threes this year. In fact, he made about 70 in French league play. And if the skill set ever comes on, this is someone that I believe has sleeper potential. He's just outside the realm of what most of us see typically because he didn't play here in the States. But one of my top 3 underrated prospects in this class. And I think he's got a very good chance to be a lottery pick.
With the 15th pick in the 2024 NBA draft, Norlander, it's you. The Miami Heat.
It is
select.
Me. We are at the Miami Heat. We are out of the lottery, by the way. Portland at 14 is the last one in the lottery. So now we're out of the lottery. You know what that means?
Oh, come on, Knuckles.
Let's go. Let's have a partners.
Come on, Anderson Cooper.
There's some new players in town, and they brought the plague.
You got my attention. You don't want that. Welcome to Kingstown.
Mayor of Kingstown. New season now streaming exclusively on Paramount Plus.
I like Jeremy Renner, I have to say.
Jeremy Renner will not be selected with the 15th pick here, I have to say.
Yeah, he also, like Topic, got injury concerns. He got, he had that snowmobile accident.
He did. We got to keep this moving. We can be a little bit, we did 45 minutes on the lottery, and now we got about 30 minutes left before we got to do more stuff. So chop here. Speaking of job security, the Miami Heat have the 15th pick.
Mm-hmm.
Elite job security. And so why not take a player who, if he doesn't hit, well, you're the Heat and you got that Heat culture and you're going to be able to survive. But if he does, I can envision this franchise taking this player and being like, he was sitting out there, look at him 4 years in, dude's actually starting and being a productive player. Give me the 2-time National Player of the Year, Zach Edey. He is a moving target on draft night. And talking to people, I would say his range feels at absolute best 12, and his floor is like 24. I'm curious, Adam Finklestein, on this tweet I saw from Fran Fraschilla earlier today. He said, I'm a Zach Edey fan, but whoever drafts him will need a creative coach. 0 transition baskets all last year. You will always be playing in half court. NBA head coach told me that a second unit centers are smaller, quicker, so it's, quote, second unit chess match every single night. Fraschilla is super smart, talks to a ton of people, knows what he's talking about there. I maintain that Edey's biggest selling point isn't necessarily what he did in college. It's the fact that he is, what, 6+ years slightly into actually playing basketball. And so he is this beautiful blend of undeniable size, true aggression. If you've actually watched Zach Edey play, he's got both touch and real dominance and knowing how to use his size. And oh, by the way, like he's still performatively young, Fink. He hasn't been doing this since he was 11 years old. So I feel like his progression is still ticking up. Agree, disagree? Do you like Edey to be in this, 14 to 18 range?
I think Edey is got, I've got him mocked in my own at 14. I think he's got increasing lottery buzz right now. I think Portland's a real possibility. But I wholeheartedly agree that his rate of improvement is the thing that people aren't talking enough about. And even over the course of his time at Purdue, even from just a conditioning standpoint, that guy was playing 40 minutes a night. I mean, that's incredible. So you project him out linearly, and I think his best basketball is still in front of him. It's just a matter of fit. In a modern day NBA defense where you can only play drop coverage, it just takes away all your ball screen versatility on the defensive end of the floor. That's a decision that comes down to scheme for NBA teams.
All right, I want everybody on record on Zach Edey.
Yep.
He will either be, here's your options: A, an all-star level center; B, a starting level center in the NBA; C, just a role player. He starts some, he's a backup center some, but he's just a guy who's in the league forever. Or D, total bust. He's out of the league in 5 years.
I go with option B. I think he actually winds up, Fink says C. I think Edey winds up starting I don't know how you want to define that, GP. Mark me down that Zach Edey starts more than 100 NBA games in his career.
Yeah, I think he's a backup. He's a role player. He's someone who's probably end up worth like a late first-round pick, but never a star in the NBA.
By the way, you can start 100 games in your career and still be like a career backup. It just means that you start.
That's why I'm saying.
Yeah,
that was an amazing hedge.
You know, and you want to, you can, if you're on the Grizzlies roster, you probably started, 20 games this year, no matter how good you are.
I'm not saying he's going to be a 10-year starter, but I do think he works his way into a starting lineup, and we're looking up and we're like, you know what, Edey, how about this? First of all, I need GP's answer, and we look up half decade from now and be like, you know, Edey's kind of making it work. Like this is going okay for him. That's kind of where I land on him. A, B, C, D. For you, GP.
I'm somewhere in between B and C.
No. One or the other. None of this somewhere in between.
I think I'm in between. I think I'm between B and C. I'm like B and
that's not how you don't have star potentials when you go in between.
I'm B and a half. I'm like a B.5 on this. I think he will start games. Like you'll look up and he'll be introduced and he will start games. I don't know that he'll ever be a great team starting center. But I think he can start games in the NBA, and he can be a role player in the NBA for a while. I do think he'll be in the NBA in 5 years. I don't think he's going to bust out of it. But, I've heard other people say I would take him in the top 10 and make him my franchise center. I'd never rule anything out. I mean, this stuff.
I rule that out.
Okay. Like I'm smart enough to know, or dumb enough, whatever, there's the internet is filled with videos of people speaking in absolutes about prospects in every sport. And buddy, you can be wrong real easily. So I'm not interested in just ruling anything out with him. But if I were betting on it, I would say he's going to be in the NBA for a while. He will start some games. He'll be a starting caliber center. But I don't know that he'll ever be one of the, say, 3 or 4 most important players on a legitimate contending type team. But like in fairness, that's hard to beat.
With the 16th pick in the 2024 NBA draft, that belongs to Gary Parrish, who's now running the Philadelphia 76ers. Who you got, GP?
Jacoby Walter out of Baylor. I'm higher on him than most, it appears. At one point, he was projected as a top 10 pick. Now it looks like he's likely to slip outside of the top 10, could go outside of the lottery. He obviously does that here. But with a Philadelphia franchise that, is trying to contend and, hopefully be, at least from their perspective, the biggest threat to Boston in the East. I know he didn't shoot it brilliantly at Baylor this year, but he does have a reputation as a shooter, as a scorer with, decent positional size. For me, at this point, he's just, in my opinion, best prospect available. I know he wouldn't be best prospect available on other people's boards, but when it got to me at 16, this was just simply put, best prospect available.
Okay, I think there's some legitimacy to that. I like Jacoby Walter. I feel like his range is pretty wide on that overall, but he had some really nice moments with Baylor last season, and I think he could be a player that winds up maybe circling back to what some of his earlier stock was on draft night. That might be dependent on trades here. I want to keep this moving here. With the 17th pick, Kyle Boone, you are up, and you've got a player here that also has some pretty interesting stock. This is the Lakers pick, by the way. And what's the one thing the Lakers need, Kyle Boone?
They need a TikTok star.
Well, I was going to say 3-point shooting, but sure, that too.
Oh, that's what I meant.
They don't need a podcast host. I know that.
They got that covered.
Yeah, they're good there. They're good there. They're going to take Jared McCain at number 17. He's someone who I think is a really good shooter. Shot 41.4% from 3-point range as a true freshman at Duke last season. 93rd percentile as in pick and rolls. 90th percentile in catch and shoot. Really good shooting touch around the basket as well. A little bit undersized for his position, but I think the shooting is going to translate. I believe he is the best shooter in this draft. I think he's a better shooter than Reed Shepherd. I really believe that, and I think that would be a steal for the Lakers, getting him at 17. They need some youth to kind of build around and kind of replenish this roster. I think Jared McCain gives that to him at number 17.
With the 18th pick in the 2024 NBA draft, the Orlando Magic select. Fink, it's on you.
Tristan da Silva. I think there's a really good chance he's off the board to Philly or the Lakers because he's a plug-and-play guy. He is kind of what he's going to be. He's going to, with the exception that he's going to get stronger. So you can put him in the game right now. When you go to an Orlando situation where they've got kind of a unique roster construction there with 2 playmaking forwards who they're trying to build around, and then a defensive-oriented guard in Jalen Suggs. Having a versatile wing who can space the floor, who's a reliable decision maker, who can make open shots and then hold his own in the defensive end of the floor, who you can plug into minutes right now. There's a lot to like about that scenario, especially for an Orlando team that made a big jump last year and is going to look to do it again in the coming year.
So Orlando is a factor in the Eastern Conference right now. Toronto less so. Still a rebuild there. Norlander, you've got the pick with the 19th pick in the 2024 NBA draft. The Toronto Raptors select.
All right, I'm going to give you the name, and then KB and Adam, real quick 3-4 lines on the prospect. Then I'll give you my thinking on it. The name is Terrence Shannon Jr. at 19. I obviously have him higher than most. KB, do you first? Your thoughts on TSJ's viability as a top, call it 24 prospect in this class? Agree or disagree?
I think that's about right. I can take him probably somewhere in the 20s. He was found not guilty of rape earlier this month. I think that has kind of cleared some questions about his current situation. And so I think we could see him sneak into the first round. He's really good when he puts the ball on the floor, decides he wants to attack, combo guard who can do a lot of different things. It's be a little bit earlier than where I'd be willing to take him, but you have a different kind of ethos in how you rank prospects and project prospects. One of the most productive college players the last few seasons. So I could see all of that kind of translating at a really high level to the NBA.
Yeah, he was All-American at Illinois, and yet I think it's reasonable to assume maybe didn't get some votes he otherwise would have gotten because he missed some time and because this cloud was hanging over him. But having it wrapped up earlier this month, not only with a not guilty verdict, but with, and I think this is important to stress as well, no damaging evidence at all. Like sometimes in a trial, somebody is found not guilty of something, but man, some stuff comes out and it's like, okay, he's not guilty or she's not guilty, but whoo, remember that testimony from day 3? That was not so great. There's really like none of that with Terrence Shannon. So, I can't speak for every franchise, but the franchises, people who work in them that I've spoken to since the not guilty verdict, they are largely, if not entirely, unconcerned. They will evaluate him the same way they evaluate any other prospect. And I don't know if it's guaranteed to go in the first round now, but he does absolutely look like a logical and sensible option for franchises picking perhaps in the late teens, but certainly in the 20s for what it's worth. In my updated mock draft this morning, CBS Sports, I had Terrence Shannon going 25th to the New York Knicks. Now we are at the 20th pick. That's me.
It was, but I was going to explain why I had him that high. But I mean, you took the TSJ stuff from me. I want to know real quick, Fink.
Because you think he's good? Is that why? You think he has that high because you think he's good?
Top 25 grade for Fink on TSJ, yay or nay?
Yeah, like 20 to 35 range for me. So I'm okay with that. Yeah.
Okay. We can keep it moving. We're running late, GP. It's all
with
good.
The 20th pick in the 2024 NBA draft, the Cleveland Cavaliers select Johnny Furphy out of Kansas. He, of course, is the one and done player who was coming off the bench early in the season. When Kansas could not find a fifth reliable starter, they finally just said, hey, let's try this Johnny Furphy character, and he was pretty good. Like showed himself to be really good. Showed himself to be a quality shooter. He's got great positional size. Obviously, Toronto is still very much rebuilding. Cleveland rather. Toronto was the previous pick. It's getting confusing because in my mock draft, I've got Johnny Furphy going to Toronto at 19. And in this mock draft, he's going 20th to the Cleveland Cavaliers. So at this point, for me, it was just, again, best prospect available that makes, sense with what the franchise already has, and adding a guard with great positional size who can knock down shots from the perimeter, above 35% from three-point range this season. Cleveland, rather. Obviously they're not trying to take a step backwards at this point. It might take a minute for Furphy to, develop. He's still very young, one of the younger players in this draft. But at that point in the draft, 20th pick, I'm comfortable spending it on him.
Okay. With the 21st pick, Kyle Boone, you are up. What franchise has the pick and who's the player, bud?
New Orleans Pelicans, and they are going to take Deron Holmes from Dayton. Averaged 20.4 points per game, 8.5 rebounds per game. one of the best players in college basketball last season. Very underrated. Can play both inside and out. He's a good shot blocker, very athletic. Talking to people around the NBA, kind of in the lead up to the NBA draft process, a lot of teams are very taken aback in a good way in how Holmes has handled himself. Someone who I think has a lot of confidence in his game, very sure of himself, and I think is going to translate at a really high level. The Pelicans need some depth in their front court. I think Holmes can come in and compete right away, given his experience at the college level.
With the 22nd pick, 2024 NBA draft, the Phoenix Suns. Fink, it's your pick. Select whom?
They're gonna take Bub Carrington, and I think this is, if this were to happen on draft night, it would be unlikely. I don't expect Carrington to get past 20. I think Cleveland would take him if he's on the board. Again, that's more intel based than my own evaluation, but I also think he's got a chance to go higher with places like OKC, Miami, and some others being really intrigued with his upside. You're talking about what has turned into a big guard because he's a late bloomer who has shown more feel than we realized in high school. He's got a big time pull-up shooter and just improved by leaps and bounds this year at Pittsburgh. So if you're Phoenix and you've got that three-headed monster there, you're drafting for someone who can step in and play an immediate role. Carrington might not be that guy, but if he's available at 22, you take him because he's far and away the highest upside guy left on the floor, and you would be able to deal him if that was something you were interested in doing, which they're expected to explore.
I think I want to follow up with you on Carrington real quick. He has been one of the few players in this draft process who clearly, if you followed college hoops, if you even followed draft Twitter, so to speak, Carrington has had a big surge in reputation, so he is going to be a first-round pick. Do you find, does your opinion and grade on him correspond with the momentum and narrative that has surrounded him over the past 6 to 7 weeks?
So what's interesting about that is typically when you get freshmen, and this class has got a couple of them that exceed expectations in the first month of the college season, they get, draft Twitter goes crazy and they say this guy's way, and they love to play you were wrong with us rankings guys. What's interesting about this class is you have a couple players who are good early on who sustained it, and Reed Shepherd, Rob Dillingham. Really, Rob got better as the year went on, but in Reed and Bub in particular, those guys made a big early splash. And typically when freshmen make a big early splash, they struggle to sustain it. Those guys kept their stock high. For me, the thing with Carrington is, like I said, just hand in the air. The thing I missed is his feel is a lot better than it looked in high school, than I gave him credit for in high school. I think that's been the variable that we didn't weigh heavily enough early on in the process, in large part because he was such a shot jacker. He really, really hunted shots. Having said that, his frame still got to evolve, and I do believe in the upside, but there's still a pretty wide range of potential outcomes.
With the 23rd pick, 2024 NBA draft, the Milwaukee Bucks select Norlander. You get to do it.
How about this? Not by design, just how it all played out here. And wouldn't this be a fun little story if it came to be? They take the guy who's been playing in that building for the past few years, Tyler Kolek out of Marquette. And to give you a little bit of insight on how a player's stock can change and relatively quickly over a year or two, I specifically remember talking to two different well-regarded, NBA evaluators during Kolek's second season with Marquette. It wasn't this past season. I think it was the year before, but it was early on. And I asked them, hey, listen, and we're talking here, we're talking there. One of them would have been Marquette at UConn, actually, I remember the conversation in person. And I asked, what's his NBA stock? Does he have an NBA future? And this in particular scout, looked at me as no shot whatsoever. And that's just to say that, this is an evolving thing and it's good to have differing opinions. But even the guys who are quote unquote NBA evaluators and these front office minds, they can wind up. Maybe this guy will not be wrong. Maybe Tyler Kolek will be drafted and be out of the league in 3 years. He might prove to be right. But I'm telling you, the discussion around Tyler Kolek, where it once was versus where it is now, is a really inspiring, really awesome story. The dude is an absolute maniac of a competitor. Averaged 15.3 points, 7.7 assists, which was elite, best in the NCAA, plus 4.9 rebounds. And oh, by the way, 3 of his 4 years in college was 108 or better from an offensive efficiency standpoint. His O rating at KenPom last year in the season was both at 118. So he's not the biggest player, but I wrote in my big board, not to go white player to white player. However, if you told me that Kolek got drafted and found a path, a journey that kind of had some A to A with like a TJ McConnell, I would 100% believe you on that. So if the Bucks got him, I think it would be a near perfect match. And that's who I got going at this point in the draft.
If I'd had $1 million and I had to bet it on the next name that's going to come out of your mouth 30 seconds ago, I would have 100% put all 1 million on TJ McConnell. I knew exactly where you were going.
But it's not unfounded. Like there's nothing there.
No, to your point, and I think this is important. I want to get your thoughts on this too, although I recognize we're running out of time. I think sometimes NBA people, even just you look at somebody, and if they're small and not athletic, or at least not a great athlete, you just assume they can't play. They're just not going to be able to do it. And yet there's like Fred VanVleet is a pretty good example of a small, not super athletic guy who just figured it out and made it. McConnell obviously has. There aren't many people like Tyler Kolek in the NBA, but there are some, and I think he's going to join them.
He's the exception to the rule. If he makes it, it won't be because he fits an archetype. It'll just be because he's a savage enough competitor and a brilliant enough mind where he exceeds what would typically come out of that body type.
That's right. KB, you a believer in Kolek?
I am. Yeah, he led college basketball in assists last season. Super high IQ. Someone who I think would be a great pick for the Phoenix Suns. Right. The Bucks would make a lot of sense, like a contending team that needs either a competent starting point guard or some point guard depth. So yeah, I have him ranked here in the 20s. I think I'd be totally fine with Milwaukee taking him at 23.
In my mock at CBS Sports, I've got him going, like you mentioned, 22nd to the Phoenix Suns. We're now the 24th pick. That's me. 24th pick, 2024 NBA draft. The New York Knicks select Kelly Ware out of Indiana. Obviously, like we just go from one player who maybe doesn't look a certain way, and then you get to this guy, and he looks exactly like what you want somebody to look like. I mean, he's long, and he's an athlete, and he can get up and down the floor. He can block shots, alter shots. He can step out to the three-point line and make them. And so the question becomes, my God, if he can do all that stuff, why are we talking about him way down here? And Fink, KB, both of you, if you don't mind, there are real questions about work ethic, focus, just that kind of stuff that they've been there since he was a high school All-American, haven't they?
Oh, yeah. Long before that. I mean, for years. This has been the story for years. It's like, how much does he love basketball? This is a guy who said out loud before in interviews, there were times where I didn't know how much I liked basketball. So motor, physicality, all those things are the questions. And listen, he made great strides this year at Indiana, especially in the second half of the year. But if he were to go to the Knicks like he is in this scenario and play for Tom Thibodeau, this would be sink or swim to the biggest extreme, because if he buys in, got like all-star potential because his tools are off the charts. But Tibbs may punch him in the face by day two. It could go either way.
I totally agree. And I think he's someone who's kind of been rising up boards of late, leading into kind of the draft this week. We'll see kind of where that shakes out. I'm probably on the lower end with Kelly Ware, and it's probably because I followed too much of Fink's coverage the last couple of years. But he was really good at Indiana, not so good at Oregon the season prior. But obviously, he's 7-footer. He can block shots. He can step out and shoot the three at a high level, which he did last season at Indiana. So there's a lot to like there. And hopefully, the questions about his drive, his motivation end up being moot, because I think he could be a really good NBA player.
KB, we'll come right back to you with the 25th pick, 2024 NBA draft. The New York Knicks are picking again. If they keep both these picks, there's some thoughts that they might not. But if they do keep both of them, they'll be selected 25th. You got them taking who?
Kaishan George from Miami. This is a guy who grew up playing point guard, ended up hitting the growth spurt. He's now 6'7", with a 6'10" wingspan, shot 40.8% from three-point range last season. Was not a guy who really was on the one-and-done radar, but certainly I think checked a ton of boxes on the way to being a likely first-round pick later this week. The size, the frame, the shooting. There's a lot to like here with Kaishan George. I think he could end up sneaking into the late lottery in this draft. Teams are really intrigued with kind of the tools that he brings just in terms of his game and his shooting ability. So be happy to get him at number 25 if I'm the New York Knicks.
We'll go straight to the 26th pick. Fink, that's you. With the 26th pick, 2024 NBA draft, the Washington Wizards select
Isaiah Collier. This is a team that, when you look at their long-term building blocks, does not have their point guard of the future. And although this would be a slip for Collier, who at one point was the top-ranked prospect in his high school class, he goes to a franchise where he would have the opportunity to earn that role of being the point guard of the future. Really powerful lead guard, tremendous passer of the basketball, little turnover prone. I don't trust the jumper. And although he was a non-defender for the most part this year at USC, I do think that will improve when he is held to a more consistently higher standard, because he's got the physical markers and the competitive tools where I think he's going to be a better defender. I just not sure about the shooting. That's the X factor.
Go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to follow up on that because he's an interesting prospect in that we now have the second year in a row where the top ranked player in a class has slipped significantly in the draft. It was Nick Smith previously, and now you've got Collier. And
this shape the rankings, guys.
We're not. No, that's not. No, if you look at the track record at 247 Sports, they do a damn fine job. And it's not. Hey, by the way, it's not on you. It's on the player. Come on now, everyone knows that. But I am intrigued to see if he slips and goes to the right kind of situation, if this might not work out for him. And I don't know if he'll slip this far. But yeah, he's an interesting one, and feels like the kind of player that if you're sitting there anywhere like 22 or lower, and he's still on the board, and he was a former number one recruit, and sometimes those guys really have a way of like finding their way back.
And you need a point guard.
And you need a point guard. Like, do you really pass on him? So it's a fascinating one there, no doubt about it. I am next up in the pecking order here. And by the way, GP, we're doing great on time. Let me tell you, we're doing great.
I correct me if I'm wrong. I thought we got a conference call in 6 minutes.
We do, but we're doing great on time right now.
Okay.
And by the way, all four of us are on it, so they can't start it without us. So here we go. So 27 minutes.
I don't think taking the position of our bosses can't do something without us. Is smart. They'll find somebody else.
Hold on, not to pull the curtain. The guy literally said, "Hey, listen, if you guys got to do a podcast, we'll wait till you guys are done to get the call."
So he runs the Spurs now. We don't need to be on that podcast. We don't need to be on that call.
That's correct. All right, Minnesota at 27. I'm sending them Trey Alexander. That's two Big East players for me in a row. Purely coincidental with the way that our big boards broke down. But Alexander obviously debated the draft last year. Then it winds up going in as an underclassman this year. He after 3 seasons in college, he's coming off averaging 17.6 points, 5.7 boards, 4.7 assists. I believe that he can find a comfortable role as an off-the-bench contributor, shooter, distributor, combo guard. His range, in talking to folks, really feels fairly wide. You might have some teams that might put him below 45 on their big board, but I think when we look up, 6-8 years from now, he's going to prove to have been one of the 30 best products from this class. So back into the first round, again, not an elite shooter, but I think enough of a good shooter. And I do like his adaptability and how he projects as an NBA-type player and athlete at the next level.
We're down to the 28th pick in the 2024 NBA draft. It's me. I'm now running the Denver Nuggets. And with the 28th pick, I am going to take Ryan Dunn out of Virginia, 6'6", elite defender, arguably the best perimeter defender in this draft. Evan Mia has his defensive ratings, and Ryan Dunn did have the highest defensive rating in the ACC this past season. Simply put, if you're a Nuggets franchise trying to win a championship for the second time in a 2-3 year span, rather, I don't know why you wouldn't really enjoy bringing an elite perimeter defender off of your bench. So he's sensible in the sense that, like in the playoffs especially, you always need as many of these guys as you can get. And Ryan Dunn, we'll see what happens on the offensive end of the court, but on the defensive end of the court, he has a chance to be exceptional.
He's kind of like the anti-Dillingham, though. Like, the defense is so overwhelmingly, like, undeniable. Dude, if Ryan Dunn had any semblance of an offensive game, he would be in the lottery. But he's falling this far because the offense has used questions to it.
But in the NBA, you know what could be valuable in the NBA? If they'll at least guard him. Like, a guy who will just guard his position, shut down somebody, and not need shots on the offensive end, those guys are worth something.
Broadly speaking, Fink and KB, in on Dunn or out?
It totally depends on the shot. If you can't shoot, you can't play. If you can't make a spot-up shot, you can't play. If it gets to the point where he can make a spot-up shot, and there are plenty of examples of guys who've done that, then he's a steal here. If he doesn't, he's not on the floor in the playoffs.
That's right. He doesn't have to be a knockdown shooter. He just has to. He has to be good enough to where you got to go stand with it. That's it. Just will he make you stand with him? If not, that's a problem. But hopefully he can get there.
Boone?
Yeah, I'd be in on him if I can get him in the second round. Probably out. I think there's too many questions on offense right now.
Look out for the Knicks. Knicks like him, I think.
Okay. Good little intel there. 29th pick is up. Only 2 more to go. Have we circled back to KB?
It's me, baby. Number 29. I'm going to take Cam Christie from Minnesota. Younger brother, Max Christie, you guys might remember.
Yep.
Good 3-point shooter. Pretty good size, 6'5", with a 6'8" wingspan. Someone again who maybe I have a type that I really like, but an unexpected one and done prospect who tested the waters and just decided, hey, I'm just going to stay in the draft. I think could have gone back to college and probably improved his draft stock, but I think there's a lot to like here with his size, with his shooting ability. Teams are going to want to take a chance on him. I think a contending team here at 29 could potentially stash him and develop him, and he could be a future NBA producer, I think, at a really high level, just with all the skill set that he brings.
All right, Fink, with the 30th pick, you're now running the Boston Celtics. Congratulations on your championship. Took you a little longer to.
Was never that smart, let me tell you.
Took you a little longer to get that 18th one, if I'm being honest, than I thought it was going to take you. But I'm glad you're finally there.
Yeah, they've upgraded the front office over there. I'm taking over. Baylor Shireman, we are running to the podium to take Baylor Shireman. Shooting is a requisite in Boston with Joe Mazzulla. Not only does Shireman make shots at a high rate, but he is an incredibly high processor who can read the game quickly. When you have stars like Tatum and Brown who can break down a defense, he'll be able to minutes right away. Did a great job of changing his body before his last season at Creighton. If he is not on the board or there's not a plug and play option, I think Boston is a very real possibility to trade this pick and move off it.
All right, real quick before we get out of here, and I didn't prepare you for this, so sorry for catching you off guard, but as we go through the top 30 picks, is there anybody where you go, my God, I can't believe nobody took this guy?
You know what, GP, before you hopped on the old StreamYard, before we booted it up, I told him to have some names ready. So Look at you. Look at us finishing each other's sandwiches. 2 players that you guys like that we didn't touch on. KB, why don't you go first?
I'm going to go Dylan Jones from Weber State. This is my guy. I believe in him. Probably going to end up going in the second round. I'm totally fine with that. I would take him with a late first round pick. He spent 4 seasons at Weber State. I talked to him at the NBA draft combine. I'm like, well, how does your game translate? Because he was 6'6". He's playing more on the ball. And he said, like, I've been the guy for 4 seasons. I'm ready to go and help the guy and contribute in a way where, I'm playing defense. I'm doing all the little things. I'm rebounding. I'm passing. So I think Dylan Jones will end up being a productive NBA player who ends up slipping to the second round, and people will end up regretting that.
Okay. You don't have a second name for us?
That's all I got.
Okay. Bank, what about you?
Jamal Shed is someone I would really think about at the end of the first round.
It.
When you're the toughest guy in the room and you're the smartest guy in the room, you're just going to find a way to make it, especially when you are an elite on-ball defender. Similar to what we talked about with Ryan Dunn, but he's not as far away. He's just got to be able to make open spot-up shots. Doesn't have to be able to make tough shots like the ones he had to take at Houston. Just has to be able to make open spot-up shots. I think he'll be able to do that. He is someone that I would take late in the first round, like place like Denver, I think would make some sense. But certainly in the second round, he offers a lot of value.
He's obviously small too, but like you mentioned, tough, smart, and like, I don't know what the proper word is for, I guess it's high character. Like I talked to Kelvin about this even before Jamal Shead became an All-American. Kelvin and I were having a conversation one day, and he was like, he was joking around, but he was like, all you guys and your 5-star freshmen, that's all you ever talk about is your 5-star freshman. He said, I don't know who he said, whether it was Kentucky, Duke, whatever, but he's like, let them have the 5-star freshman point guard. Just give me Jamal Shead, and I'm happy. I'll take Jamal Shead every day.
What was Jarris Walker? Never mind.
I know, right? Yeah. Then he got to a point, because he was so good with the Jamal Shead, he got to a point where he could take a Jarris Walker, right, and then he didn't mind the 5-star freshman so much. But I'll never forget that. He was in love with Jamal Shead. And
everybody is.
And the parents. I met the parents at the Naval Academy. You talk about, Dan Hurley talked about this on I think it might have been JJ Redick's podcast. Like, I recruit the parents. Like, I want to know who raised you. And the mom and dad are awesome. Like,
we don't talk enough about that Hurley JJ Redick podcast. We talk about JJ Redick and LeBron, but we don't talk enough about Hurley and JJ.
JJ was like, Dan, tell me how you did this. Well, there's a reason one guy got the job offer before.
JJ was like, so Dan, if you ever were coaching the Lakers, how would you handle LeBron? And with oh God, who are we talking? Who are we
Jamal
talking about? Jamal
Shead?
Shead, yeah. So I do not have him in my first 30 picks, but I recognize that's somebody that I might regret. Another one for me, I have this guy going 23rd. We didn't have him in our top 30. Eve Meese out of Baylor.
Yeah.
You know,
Wait, he didn't get picked.
he did not
didn't get picked. He's also my highest rated player that we didn't pick. Yes.
Right.
Oh, that's an oversight. Yeah. For
Okay.
sure.
Okay. That's the one. That was the biggest miss relative to my mock draft. Is he's the only guy in the top 23 that I have that we did not take in the top 30.
I would say real quick as we get out of here, another player we didn't mention that seems like he's probably going to go first round is Tyler Smith, G League Ignite prospects, 6'11", lefty. Interesting player, but definitely a project. And then my highest rated player that we didn't talk about that I like that'll go second round probably is KJ Simpson, another Colorado prospect. I'm very in on him being a flexible two-way kind of guy, role player. But those are some of our studs outside the top 30. As we get out of here, reminder, you can catch Kyle Boone and Adam Finklestein. They're going to be all over HQ on Tuesday, in addition to podcast stuff. And then on Wednesday and Thursday, 2 nights of the draft. Reminder, Thursday's draft round 2, which we don't even need. That's going to be at like 4:30 in the afternoon, but you can continue to catch any and all draft coverage from the 4 of us here, in addition to our slew of analysts across HQ.com platforms. We appreciate everyone that kind of comes around when it comes draft time, because we know a lot of you regulars are with us for the thick of the regular season in college hoops. So we appreciate you so much.
Shouts to Devin Downey, Chester, South Carolina, Terry Teagle, he's a legend, Huck Larnell. Thank you guys once again for watching and listening to the Eye on College Basketball podcast. If you're not subscribed, please go subscribe anywhere you subscribe to podcasts, Apple, Spotify. There's more of us than there are of them, and that should be reflected in the comments. So make sure you're doing that, and we'll talk to you again real soon. I think the plan at this point is Norlander and I, at the very least, go live after night 1 of the draft, and then we'll figure everything out after that. Sound good?
Sounds good.
Hey, we're used to working until 3, 4 in the morning on draft night.
It's going to be a blessing.
And every night during March.
All right, GP, let's go.
That'll be fun. We'll see y'all later. We got to jump on a conference call. Till then.